Morning, Miss Aldridge. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Would you mind answering a few questions for us?
No, I don't mind.
Can you tell us about the place you was born in?
I was born in Spring Hill, Louisiana, which is about an hour and a half from here. My grandparents both worked at the paper mill. That was an international paper, and they worked at the box plant. Nowadays, that the paper company, the paper mill itself, is closed down, and I believe all they have left is the box plant.
Do you have any fond memories about your grandparents?
I do. I remember at my grandmother's house, she lived in Fayetteville. We'd go gather eggs, and they were free-range houses, so most of the eggs were all fertile, and we had to fight the roosters. My grandfather, we always went fishing with him or crawdadding, and he'd let me drive his truck and his lawnmower. And then my dad's parents, actually they lived down the street from my mother's parents, and that was when I was younger. I picked things out of the garden, played with the dogs and things like that.
As a child, what did you do during the summer?
Oh goodness, I was an outdoor person. We always rode bikes, went swimming. Like I said, we'd go visit relatives.
What is one of your favorite childhood memories?
Probably roller skating. I remember back in when I was in 5th, probably through 7th grade. I'd go skating Friday nights, Saturday day, all days, and Saturday night. Sometimes I'd go skating on Sunday.
You said you had your grandparents right down the road. How large was your family? Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I have one brother, and my mom and dad, and my dad was was their only child from those grandparents. And then on my mother's side, there were 6 in her family, 4 girls and 2 boys.
When you was about 13, when you were about 13, what was it like in your house in the evenings?
13, we'll come home. Now, I walked to and from school at that age, and we had to do our homework first. Then we usually ate a snack, and if we didn't watch TV, we were outside riding bicycles, picking oranges, riding our bikes over to Texas A&M University. That's when we lived in Kingsville.
You said you walked to school, but how far was it to school?
Oh, for me it seemed like a couple of miles, but actually it probably was less than a mile.
Speaking of school, how was the clothing styles like when you was in high school?
Oh boy. My high school years, we liked mini skirts. Our dresses, when we stood up, our dresses had to come to the tips of our fingers. If you had short arms, well then your little dress was a little shorter. I got sent home a couple of times for what I wore to school. One day I wore my little Sizzler outfit. It's where the top matches and the skirt kind of flares out, and then it has the little matching bottoms that go with it. So when you bend over, that was what everyone saw.
How was the social life back then?
Actually, probably not too much different than today, other than we did not have cell phones. But the social life was about the same. There was, we had the goat ropers, and we had the nerd group, and we had the cowboy. Well, the goat ropers cowboy group, and I guess the fashion statement group. I don't know that they were necessarily the nerds, but the cheerleaders and ball players and whatever. They had their own little thing going.
What time did class start in the morning?
I want to say 8:30.
About around about what time did it end in the afternoons?
Probably about 3:15.
So you have a shorter day than we do now?
Yes. We only had 6 periods a day.
How'd you like that?
It was fine. We only had one lunch though.
How
So-
big was the school?
I'm gonna guess probably 400 or 500.
What month did the school year start?
Probably, I think by the time I got to high school, it was like maybe a week or so before Labor Day. But I think when I was younger, we didn't start till after Labor Day. So they've definitely lengthened our school year.
What month did y'all used to get out in?
May, before Memorial Day.
How old was you when you started dating?
Well, I had to beg and plead my dad, of course. He said I couldn't date till I was 16, and then finally I kept begging him. So he said I could go out on double dates when I turned 15.
Who'd you go out on a double date with?
Oh, my friend Debbie and her boyfriend. And she says, Kathy, do I have a date for you? And I said, okay. She says, well, he's a football player. I said, okay. So we go to the drive-through movie. We had drive-in movies back in those days. And no one hid in the trunk or anything. We just went in and paid. And Debbie had the blankets, and we were babysitting 2 kids at the same time. And so Debbie put the blanket on the front windshield where you couldn't see anything out. She put the kids on the front windshield. Her objective was not necessarily to watch the movie. And needless to say, all the way home, I was hanging out the window hollering, help, help. I was glad that date was over.
So was going to the movies a frequent thing when you went on dates?
We did. We went out to movies. And I lived in the Metroplex, so this was when I was in high school. We lived in Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, so sometimes we'd drive to Fort Worth and go ride the go-karts. We just did different things. I lived right by the lake. I lived right by Grapevine Lake, and so a lot of times we'd ski, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be a nighttime date.
How would you describe your summers?
Fun, and more fun. But, I worked, so I always worked. When I was in high school, I was working at Catfish Hut as a salad girl. And it's right on the lake, so the whole front was windows. And so we could see everybody skiing and fishing and playing on the water all day long. And then needless to say, after work, then my group, we'd go hit the water.
How old was you when you first got married?
I was 20. Bad mistake.
Was your school segregated?
I would say no. But now that you mention that, since I moved so much, I never really paid too much attention to it. I do know when I was in 7th and 8th grade, there were 7 white people in my grade, and I was one of them, and everyone else was Hispanic. Of course, I was living in Kingsville then. When I moved to Grapevine, by the time I graduated, we had 13 black students, no Hispanics.
What type of chores did you have around the house?
I usually like to pick the outside chores. I didn't much like washing the dishes or cooking supper that much. I always preferred to mow the grass or trim the bushes, things like that.
What kind of car did you have?
My very first car cost $100. It was an Austin Healey Sprite, and I got to steer because the brakes worked and my dad